Don't give yourself away so easily. People can tell what you're thinking by how you're feeling on the outside. Therefore, there is no real wisdom but to hide what is on your mind. A man who shows his hand and plays cards will soon lose all his money. He must save what he says and does to quell people's curiosity. When people are persistently trying to figure out what you're thinking, hide your thoughts like a squid squirting ink. Don't let other people know what your proclivities are. Don't let them predict your proclivities, because if people know what your proclivities are, they can undermine them, arch them, and abuse them in many ways. Maintain your mystery with moderate silence. Most people think what they understand isn't great, and what they don't understand is great. The exotic is more expensive than the familiar, and the unknown is overrated. Similarly, people value you more when they feel mysterious about you. So if you want a good reputation, don't explain yourself in too much detail. It's just right to understand what you're saying, but not give them a chance to criticize you. Most people worship the unknown or the mysterious without even knowing why. Their being praised stimulate your opponent's desires. The more you want, the easier it is to move. The clever use other people's desires as tools to achieve their own goals. They stimulate his desires even more by making him realize how difficult it is to get what he wants. A person may not be attracted to what he already has, but he's passionate about what he doesn't have. The more difficult Jim is, the more passionate he becomes. That's why you can control him completely by constantly stimulating his desires. The most subtle way to move someone is to make them depend on you to satisfy their desires. The reason why it takes time to decline is that when you're asked to do something, don't say yes right away. Think carefully before saying yes, because what you get after waiting a long time is more valuable. In the same way, when rejecting a request, don't let it hurt the other person's feelings by saying no. Refuse politely after a reasonable amount of time. Most people can easily accept rejection after some time has passed, because during that time, much of the initial expectation disappears. If you're in a situation where you have to say no, even if the person urges you to do so urgently, if possible, delay your reply. Give the person time to stop obsessing over the issue and focus on something else. Do not challenge him, and do not challenge anyone who disagrees with your opinion or your idea. Be the first to see if his objection is cunning or stupidity. Maybe you're being stubborn and you don't want to listen to anyone. Or maybe you're deliberately giving your opinion to see if you're right. If it's the former, you can laugh it off. But if it's the latter, you have to be prepared for hidden danger. When dealing with someone who has an ulterior motive to find out what you're really thinking, it's wise to keep your guard up. Don't beg for compliments. There are people who go around bragging about something they didn't do as if they did. They're shamelessly trying to deceive people, but all they do is make fun of them. These braggarts are like chameleons, constantly changing their appearance to deceive people, while others, like ants, scrounge for the crumbs of other people's achievements. They too seek to steal others' honor and become the object of ridicule. If you've achieved something great, don't boast about it. Don't boast about it. Be satisfied with what you've achieved. Let others praise you for your achievements. Don't let people write praises about you to make you feel good about yourself forever. Try to be a hero rather than look like a hero. Don't waste your time. The most precious thing we have is time. Without time, wealth, health, love, even life doesn't exist. But for most of us, time is wasted on mechanical or unimportant tasks, and there's nothing more foolish than being hit with something you don't need. A man who is hit with a lot of things because of his vain reputation, or simply because he can't say no, ends up with other people's envy,
ravaging his life and suffocating
his soul. Don't listen to or speak of your master's secrets. Don't try to know his secrets. You're mistaken if you think you're his godmother just because he confessed his secrets to you. It's not a privilege to listen to his secrets. It's just a burden on your heart. One day, we will break the mirror that reminds us of our ugliness. Similarly, we will distance ourselves from those who have seen our true selves and be burdened by those who know our weaknesses, especially those who are above us. We can't tolerate those who are below us holding on to our weaknesses. He's willing to risk his sanity to recover his lost freedom. That's why there are so many people
who were once the favor of those in power, but were suddenly destroyed.
Therefore, it is wise not to hear or say the secrets of those above. Learn from your competitors. Learn how to use your enemies, how to grasp a situation, not with a blade that can cut your hand, but with a handle that can strike. This applies to all competitions. A wise man gains more from his enemies than from a foolish addict. Throughout history, there have been many people who have used their enemies' hatred to overcome great difficulties and become great people. And flattery is more dangerous than hatred, because the hatred of an opponent stimulates them to correct their own flaws, but flattery overcomes them. A wise man acts as a mirror to his opponent's hatred. This is a far wiser attitude than acting as a mirror to his opponent's affection. Control your tongue. It's a beast once the gubby comes undone. It's hard to gag it. The tongue is the pulse of the mind. A wise person can rid the mental health of the mind through the words of the other person. The unfortunate thing is that those who should be most careful with their tongues tend to flick them all the time, whereas the wise always have to be careful with what they say to keep their minds occupied. Avoid embarrassment and show great self-control. Never love. Don't ever hate him. Today's friend can be tomorrow's worst enemy. These things happen all the time in life. Do not let a friend who has forsaken your friendship take advantage of you rashly, so that he can easily pick a fight with you later on. And always keep the gates of reconciliation open to your enemies, the safest and most peaceful gates of tolerance. Often, the joy of revenge turns to great pain, and the satisfaction of hurting someone turns to sadness. I want you to hone yourself every day, because no one is born perfect. Therefore, each day must be spent sharpening oneself to improve character and excel.
When a fool is content with what he has
and does nothing about it, a wise man owns himself daily to have taste, pure intelligence, firm will, and mature judgment. As a result, a foolish person will live until the very end without the most important thing, while a wise person will eventually reach perfection,
even if it takes a long time.
A person who hones himself every day and achieves perfection will be recognized by those who are as wise and cautious as he is, and will naturally mingle with them. Quit while you're ahead. A good gambler stands up when he's winning. Successful retreat is as good as a brave attack. If you've done enough, you've done great. And if you have, you need to know when to quit. Long-lasting luck is dangerous. It's only when good things happen to you, and bad things happen to you, and good things happen to you again, that you feel safe. And when luck strikes fast, you're at risk of slipping into a million pieces. Small fortunes last a long time, while great fortunes fade quickly, because luck gets tired of carrying heavy people for a long time. Ask for advice and fill the void. Many people don't realize that they're ignorant, and the ignorant people live under the illusion that they're better than others. For those who don't know the fact that they are ignorant, there is no way to remind them of that, because ignorant people don't try to find what they lack. Very few people have great wisdom, but for the most part, they have nothing better to do, because no one asks them to teach them wisdom. Asking someone else for advice doesn't diminish their brilliance or question their ability. On the contrary, by seeking advice, we can achieve something greater than ourselves. Therefore, we must always seek advice from those who are at least a little wiser than us, to fill the gaps we lack. Expectations can be a burden that holds us back. When you're starting something, don't over-exaggerate other people's expectations, because in your head, you might think it's going to be easy, but when you're actually doing it, you run into some unexpected things. The real world and the imaginary world are completely different. It's easy to let your imagination run wild, but it's hard to realize it. And it's even harder to be disappointed when your imagination creates too many expectations. Often, we are deceived and disappointed by our own excessive expectations. Nothing warps reality like hope. Therefore, in order to achieve success safely, we must tame hope with a clear head. When you start something, it's good to have the right amount of curiosity, not too much expectation. And when you exceed people's expectations, the joy and glory doubles. Stay away from those who make you feel small, and shine alone among the countless stars. But once the sun comes up, you can barely see it, or you can't see it at all. Never go near anyone who's trying to discredit your talent, and only date people who will make you shine. In the work of the Roman poet Marcellus Pavla, the cunning, this was her way of showing off her radiant beauty. She had a bunch of scruffy, ugly maids around her, all the time to make her look good. But if you don't have superb skill or talent, beware of hanging out with people who don't mean much, because along with them, your reputation can plummet to the ground. While you're pursuing your career, you should surround yourself with people who are capable. But once you've succeeded, you should only surround yourself with people who can make you look good. Know the difference between good and incompetent. If you can't get angry when you're being wronged, you're incompetent. The reason they don't get angry isn't because they're good, but because they're stupid. When the birds learn that the scarecrow can't move, they mock him and peck at his crops. It's the same in relationships. A wise person mixes bitter and sweet in all relationships. If there's only sweetness, it's nothing but sweets for children and foolish people. How to turn your flaws into charm. Very few people have any moral or personal flaws, but by obsessing over our own flaws, we can't overcome them, and they get the better of us. Also, many people don't see the beams in my eyes, but only the specks in other people's eyes. They ignore the many advantages you have, and accuse you of only the smallest flaws. Just as a single cloud can block out the sun, our reputation is covered in the smallest flaws that harm it. People with a wicked heart are quick to find it and vilify it endlessly. Therefore, turning flaws into charm is the greatest wisdom for success. In the days of Julius de la Riva, the wearer of the laurel wreath made his baldness not a sign of shame, but a token of glory. It is decisiveness that characterizes the winners. In this world, the damage caused is far greater than the damage caused by one's rash decisions. In war, standing still can do more damage than moving. There are those who can't make decisions for themselves and only hope that someone else will push them. They know how to handle things, but they're not decisive enough to take action. On the other hand, there are those who are agile enough not to get themselves in trouble. Their success comes easily to them due to their excellent judgment and decisiveness, because they do things at the same time. As they say, they always have the time and the confidence. Don't reveal what's incomplete, because nothing is what it seems at first, but when someone sees an unfinished version, it leaves an impression on their mind, and when they see it finished, it jogs their memory and hinders their view. Taking a glance at the whole, unfinished image only highlights their shortcomings rather than provoke curiosity. If anything is incomplete, it is not properly judged, no matter how delicious a dish is. Seeing how it's cooked can either spoil your appetite or make you feel uncomfortable. That's why all master craftsmen seldom show their work when it's already in its first stage. You can learn this lesson from nature too. Nature will never reveal herself to the world until the time is right. Do whatever it takes to get your way. If you can't wear the pelt of a lion, at least wear the pelt of a fox. If brute force doesn't work, be clever. And if one method doesn't work, use another. If courage doesn't work, take a shortcut called cunning. If you can't get what you want, it's better to ignore it. Success is the best revenge. There is no greater act of heroic revenge than to praise those who criticize you and to torment those who humiliate you. By excellence, your success will be excruciating torture for those who wish you ill, and your glory will be hell for those in competition. Making someone suffer by succeeding is the best revenge. A jealous person doesn't die just once. He dies a new death every time someone he's jealous of gets applause. As long as the envy's reputation endures, so does the envy's suffering. The former lives forever in glory, the latter forever in pain. The trumpet of fame declares the former immortal, the latter hanged in worry and concern. The story I've just told you is a reference to Balthazar Gracian's wisdom of winning the man. I've told you about Balthazar Gracian before, but his writing needed to be reminded once again, so I made a film. As I reread his writings, I can see once again why Schopenhauer and Nietzsche have been so good to the story. Balthazar Gracian's writing is neither vague nor abstract. It is so utterly real that it can sometimes feel cold. The Spain he lived in the 17th century was rife with mistrust and selfishness. The powerless peoples were trapped in poverty, and only a few people were living like kings, flaunting their power. Balthazar couldn't stand by and watch. Gracia sought to impart life's attitude and wisdom to the people. He explored human nature and human desires deeply, and thought that the world we lived in was not an easy place. So he wrote about our lives in a very realistic
and cold way.
In fact, nothing has changed very much from the Spain he lived in the 17th century or today. There is still a widespread mistrust and egotism in our society, and we face many difficulties in our relationships.
His advice on relationships
Is still with us centuries later. One quote that struck me personally was, Balthazar Gracia believed that simply stimulating the other's desires over and over was enough to completely control them. In fact, we take for granted what we already have unburned, with desire for what we do not have. As Schopenhauer said, I believe this book is worth reading by your side for the rest of your life. His poignant insights into humanity and the advice he would give us would be invaluable in our lives.